Welcome to the Any Spartan Show. This episode we talk a lot actually about Shale Hill, the 24-hour as many laps as you can event held at Shale Hill. We also talk a bit about the upcoming US OCR Championships, and we reminisce a little about Superhero Scramble after the sad news of its founder's passing. Enjoy the show. If this is your first time listening to the show, thanks for checking us out. We record roughly weekly, and you get to listen to myself, Paul Jones, Sandy Ree, and Josh Chase chat about the obstacle course racing scene. We also do interviews with race directors and business owners in the OCR space. I encourage you to go and check out all of our other episodes over on podcast.anyspartans.com, and while you're there, subscribe to us. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, anywhere else you're going to find a podcast. You can also find us over on Facebook as The Any Spartan Show, and we really encourage you to leave questions in the comments that we answer every episode. Now let's get on with the show. Welcome to episode 52 of The Any Spartan Show. On this show, we have a special guest, and we are missing someone. So Josh could not make the recording tonight, so we've replaced him. That's it. You're out, Josh. This week we have we have Kelly on the line. Kelly Harder. She is joining us to talk about Shale Hill, the recent 24-hour. As someone who had never raced Shale Hill before, she went out and killed it, and we were all there as well. And we wanted to get in a little more detail. You know what Shale Hill is like for someone who has never run around the course before, because for both Sandy and I, that was a long distant memory. And, of course, Sandy is here too. So, hello, ladies.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So before we get into that, though, we wanted to just do a quick, piece, I guess. And this is a little bit of a sad one, I guess. But, many of you may have heard that last week, right after the eclipse happened, there was an accident, and Sean Ace O'Connor, who was the founder, the owner of Superhero Scramble, which, of course, I think many of the longtime OCR people here will remember. He was in an unfortunate accident and has passed away, and his girlfriend or fiancée, I think, was in critical condition as a result. So thoughts go out to his family and his friends. If you check his page, you'll see there's a huge outpouring of people with good memories of things Sean did. It turns out he was a serial entrepreneur. Along with Superhero, he's done a whole bunch of other stuff as well. And even though Superhero kind of left the OCR scene under a bit of a dark cloud, it still put on, I think, it held a very important place in the OCR space. I mean, it was one of the early non-Spartan Tough Mudder Warrior Dash races that really made it and started traveling. We had it up in New England, twice, I think? Sandy, was it twice in New England? And then a couple of times in upstate New York?
Twice that I remember going to, so I think that was it, because I don't think I missed one.
Okay, so twice in New England, both times at the much-lamented Amesbury Sports Park. And I also went to one in upstate New York, which was... when I say it was on the side of a mountain, I mean even the festival was on the side of the mountain. There was not a single piece of flat ground in the whole venue. And that was quite interesting. That was probably one of the more fun races I'd ever done. But, yeah, I mean, so, rest in peace, Ace, and all the best wishes from us to his family and friends and anyone who came across them, I guess.
I agree.
It's a tough one.
It's always sad.
I think it caught a lot of people by surprise because certainly after Superhero, Ace went on to found a paddleboarding, originally just a business, but it turned into what looked like a community. And from what I can gather, he sold absolutely everything, bought a trailer and a truck, and was traveling the country doing paddleboarding events out of the trailer and a truck and creating YouTube videos. And if you look at the post to his page, he inspired an awful lot of people in his post-superhero life. I was not aware of any of that. Yeah, he had a YouTube channel where he had quite a lot of people following their adventures, finding or traveling up and down. I don't know where they were going, but they founded a business doing swimwear. I mean, he and his fiance, they did a lot of stuff together. So, the guy was obviously one of those natural born hustlers, I guess, always looking for something to do that didn't want to work in an office, and it doesn't get much more contrary to that than living out of a trailer and traveling the country.
Traveling the country with a paddleboard in the back. And I do want to say, I don't think that it was his fiance that was hurt. I think it was a friend of his. I think his fiance is the one who posted that he was killed in the accident. I
thought it was okay. I read it differently, but that's either way. He and a friend have been injured, she was injured.
Well, either you're right or I'm right, but either way, we've covered our bases. Mm-hmm. So our apologies to whichever one of us got it wrong. So
I know Superhero really put Spartan on the hop in the early days, because while Spartan was out there trying to grow and build, Superhero showed up relatively well funded for a startup OCR and immediately started a competitive division. Was it the Scramble Gamble? I think it was called. The opening wave was a money paying elite male, elite female, and elite team.
Yep.
And in New York, upstate New York, we had a men's and a women's NES team on the podium who won cash. And I think at Amesbury, we also had a women's team on the podium.
Yes.
So that was Corrine, Heather, Jen Tadeo, and Lisa. Was that the women's team? That sounds about right.
Sounds pretty close. I'd have to go back and look at the photographs.
The heady days of early OCR.
Aaron Schlosser was part of the elite team, too.
Yeah. And then, of course, we all showed up as the biggest team for one of those Amesbury races, and we made everybody on the team show up in superhero costumes.
Well, more specifically, Batman.
That's right.
Any iteration of Batman. The movies, the TV shows, whatever.
You had a killer Joker costume.
That was quite fun. Yeah, my Joker costume was pretty true to the Jack Nicholson Joker, but Bobby Jackson was the one who nailed it right out of the park with the nurse's costume. Yeah. So as good as mine wanted to be, his was so much better.
I spent the entire morning before the race walking around in sweatshirt and a pair of sweatpants and a sweatshirt, because about 3 minutes before the race I went and stood right behind Vince, took them off, and was wearing a Batgirl cami and hot pants. Yes. I'm not sure he was impressed with me about that. I don't think he liked that. I don't know why. Well, I thought it looked quite good.
He liked it better than Melanie did, because Melanie was the one you had the bet with as far as who could show up more, dressed more risquely. I guess would be
don't
the word.
Believe
and,
she ever paid up that beer. She bet me a beer for that not. One.
But the one good thing that came out of that was the debut fit challenge in the prom dresses.
That's right.
That was the follow-up bet.
That was the
follow-up. You never did it, but 34 of us showed up to the inaugural fit challenge in prom regalia, which was so much fun.
You know what else Superhero did that was before their time? Night waves. Remember that?
They did that one really late night, 10 p.m. I think it started.
And I forget who it
ended around 10 p.m.
I forget who it was, but somebody got really drunk in the festival in the boiling heat and dehydrated, drank too much beer, and then went out and did the night wave with borrowed headlamps and borrowed shoes, and it didn't end well. I think I remember. I don't
remember who that was, but I definitely remember.
I'm not going to say the name on the air. They know who they were.
I was scheduled to do the night wave and realized that I was in over my head and changed my mind and ended up just volunteering instead.
My understanding is that night wave was nothing more than a jaunt through the mud with a bunch of beers and partying and fun and a few obstacles here and there. And
I kept my happy little backside in the festival area and cannot speak to any of it.
I think I did the same thing. I had my dad with me, if I recall, and we did the exact same thing.
That was the night of the Team Mike McNeil pub crawl.
That's right. Yeah. This is probably going back
wow,
to
way back when.
2012? Yeah,
2012 or 2015. One of the two.
Like we said, Superhero left the OCR space under a bit of a cloud. They had a mixture of bad luck and bad management overall, and left the space with some monies not being paid out to athletes and such. But at the end of the day, they put on some really fun races. There are a ton of people walking around with Superhero Scramble tattoos on them. Free entry for life. They got free entry. The first 100 got free entry for life if they got a Superhero Scramble tattoo. Our very own Mario has one. It
wasn't a long-lived life.
No, it wasn't. So rest in peace, Ace.
Yep.
All right. We have a race. So last weekend was a busy race. There were a whole bunch of Spartans going on. Josh went up to Quebec, and I won't steal his thunder, but when he is on, we shall talk about his experience at the Ultra Beast, his redemption year, because if you recall, we've teased him a few times about not coming home with his buckle last year. But we, meaning Sandy, myself, and Kelly, we went to the 24 Hours of Shale Hill. Now, just to set the stage for those of you who have lived under a rock for a while and may not be aware, Shale Hill is a permanent fixed course in Vermont. It's in Benson, Vermont. It's about a 30-minute drive from Killington. For everyone who drives up there for Killington, it's no further than Killington. From my house, it's about a 2-hour, 40-minute drive. From Boston, it's probably a 3-hour, 20-minute drive. It is not too far, and it is a permanently installed 10K loop on private land with 80-some obstacles that range from a wall and a hay bale to the destroyer, and worse. And we've quite happily driven all the way out there and lined up and gone and raced one lap and gone home again. But this event is different. This was the 24 Hours of Shale Hill. And as the name suggests, you did as many laps as you could in 24 hours, which for some people was quite a few. For me was a single lap, and then I passed out and fell asleep in my tent all night. Camping was included. Pretty much everything you needed was included. Registration, no parking fees, no insurance fees, just you paid your upfront money and you showed up the night before and camped, set up a tent in the field, and you were good to go. So we wanted Kelly on because Kelly has never raced Shale Hill before. She's never tried pretty much any of the obstacles, I would imagine. And she came out, and how many laps did you end up going home with, Kelly?
I got 2 laps in.
Which is double what I got.
Each took me about 5 hours.
You doubled my lap count. You doubled my lap count straight out the back. And what about you, Sandy? What did you get?
I ended up with 4. I was going to quit after 3 because I woke up the Friday before with a cold, and I felt awful the entire weekend. So I went out and did 1, 2, and 3 and thought, I'm done. And then early morning hours, 6 o'clock, I was like, screw it. If I sit here, I'm just going to be miserable for 4 hours. So I went and tied my shoes and grabbed my stuff, and off I went all by my lonesome for the lap 4.
How was that lonesome lap 4?
Actually, it was very, very nice.
Yeah?
I must say, because Kelly will go into this a little bit, I'm sure. They have the Journeyman option or they have the competitive option. And anyone who knows me knows that I do Shale Hill Journeyman, hands down. If I
recall, you basically invented Journeyman at Shale Hill.
I was the one who talked Rob into doing it in the first place, yes. Because to do the course is hard enough. I don't want to be penalized for the things that I know that I can't do. So on that 4th lap, I did every single thing, with the exception of the mud crawl right before there's a slant wall about little past the halfway mark. There's just a gratuitous mud crawl, and I was not about to do that. And on the very last lap, I did send a fondue to Hay Bale Hell. I did all the other hay bales, but Hay Bale Hell, I was like, yeah, I'm itchy enough, I'm scratchy enough, I'm cut up enough, I'm not doing the hay bale. So everything else, the obstacles I wasn't capable of doing successfully, I did something. whether it be a hang, whether it be whatever. And there's nothing worse than hanging by your fingers from a 6x6 block of wood that digs into your fingers, and you slowly count to 10 or 15, and it's like, oh my goodness. So anyway, I was very proud of that loop, because as you know, Journeyman, when you get into the later, it's a lot of Journeyman, not doing it. And,
tap the obstacle. There you go, I did it.
On that fourth lap, I did 99% of everything in some way, shape, or form. And
that's awesome.
I was very happy about that.
So how was your experience, Kelly? Talk us through your first and second lap.
So my first lap, everybody started running. And this is typical for me.
They do that.
Race
They figure it
anyways.
out really quickly that running's a bad idea.
And I just start walking, and I kept looking back, and I could see the few people that were up spectating, watching me just walk along, until finally they kind of disappeared in the background. And I just kind of took it because I knew which way to go, to follow the yellow arrows. And at one point, Ben Manning, he was volunteering, and he kind of came over, and he stuck with me so I wasn't by myself. And he actually did both my laps. He stuck with me. I kept telling him he was babysitting me.
That guy is the Energizer Bunny, by the way. I saw him, he ran down to the corner store, which is a quarter mile down the road, just to grab a bag of ice, and ran back with a bag of ice. The guy doesn't slow down.
And he stuck with me, even when I was starting to get grumpy with him, during the second lap, he stuck with me. There was a couple times I was like, you just need to let me think. Because I got stuck in the mud about ankle deep at one point. There was one spot that was muddy, and I was just ankle deep, and I was frustrated, and I finally got myself out. But that was one thing about Shale Hill. It was going out there, it was definitely a very intimidating aspect of, okay, I'm going out there. It's a 24-hour race. I have 24 hours to do what I can.
Yeah.
But the Journeyman is definitely what was the draw, because I was like, I don't have to worry about penalties, which are going to slow me down even more. When there are penalties, because I will do the penalties that I'm able to do physically. Mm-hmm. But it was kind of neat because there weren't a crazy amount there was no backups at all even with the multi-lapping, because everybody was out there so much. I never really saw backup, when I was out there. And what was kind of cool was I've always wanted to do at least get up onto the destroyer and kind of just see it from a different angle, because I'm usually kind of set back watching it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool that I actually got to get up on it and hang from some of the blocks a little bit. And I was definitely able to try a lot of different things that normally there's backups at different races, and get to try those, which was really cool, because they're ones that intimidate me, and I'm like, I don't want a lot of people around when I'm trying these things. You
don't want people trying to help and cheer you on, and just leave me alone.
Right, just let me try.
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool, to do that. And some of the hills I was kind of nervous about, when I had to hold the rope to get down, because I have a thing about falling backwards. So going down backwards was just that was something I had to get over. And finally I was able to do it, and I was able to go down. So that was really cool.
And those hills are deep.
Yeah. And that was what was kind of freaking me out. I definitely wore my ice bugs, my studded ones. Mm-hmm. And I was very thankful. I kept those on. I forced myself back into them for my second lap, because I had taken them off to rewrap my ankle. And I was like, I have to put these back on, because I did have my other ones with me, but I was like, I want the studs. So that was kind of just neat that I was able to do those things. But one thing that really stuck out to me was that the race directors they would see me, and they would come up to me, and they would always constantly check on me by name. There was one point during my second lap where I was sitting at Bad Attitude, because I was waiting for some fellow teammates to catch up to me. But I got cold and I went on. But I was sitting there, and I was by myself because Ben had gone to get something real quick. And Rob actually drove up, and right away by the look on his face, I could tell he thought something was wrong, because I was just sitting on the ground at the bottom of bad attitude. And I was like, I promise, nothing's wrong. I'm fine. I'm fine.
I've seen that same look on his face of what's happened.
And it was just, honestly, I was just kind of sitting there, just twiddling my thumbs. I was stretching a little bit because I was getting a little tight from being out there. But my second lap, I ended up finishing in the dark. A whole group had ended up, the group that I was supposed to be meeting up with, it was Sean, Courtney, and Shane were trying to catch up to me, but I kept moving because I kept getting cold.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't sit still long enough. And they finally caught up at the Tarzan. So we were able to kind of finish together. So both laps, which was cool, while Ben was with me for the entire lap, I was able to finish with other teammates that had caught up to me during their second, or in that case, their fourth lap, or first for one of them. But that was just kind of a neat aspect, was being out there and everybody was able to catch up. And we were able to kind of cross the finish line, or
what do you
finish
think of the
together and go up
obstacles? 'Cause
there.
Shale Hill's obstacles obviously have a reputation for being pretty brutal and difficult, and there's certainly a whole bunch I can't do. And these days I use my Journeyman superpowers to move on by them when I'm tired or tired or exhausted. But as a first timer, what do you think of some of the obstacles you came across?
I was definitely intimidated. I would look at it and I'm like, I know that I physically can't do that. But like, I would at least kind of, if somebody else was coming through, I would stand there and I would watch them.
Yeah.
Or I would like hang off of something, like one of the ropes I was kind of toying with. So that was what I would do, but it was definitely intimidating. But again, the whole Journeyman made it so that I wasn't like disappointed in myself. I wasn't beating myself up because, hey, I can't do this. It was just like, I can't do it. That's okay. I'm going to move on, because there was still plenty that I could do. And that's one thing I really liked, because I heard that Shale Hill was one of the hardest, especially on the race local circuit. And last year, I had just joined the team shortly before it had happened. So I didn't understand what it was as I was watching Facebook last year. Like, what is this event that everybody's talking about? Like, this looks like fun. Camping? Doing a race? This sounds like so much fun. So this year it was on my must list. So I was happy that they did do the 24 hours last weekend. And I did get to go up there and volunteer for Polar Bear. So I knew what to expect for the drive up. And
where'd you drive it from? So I'm in New Braintree, which is about 10 minutes from where Spartan holds the Barry Super, or the Barry Spartan races. But I met up with, Courtney picked me up, and then we went to Hadley and then drove up. Oh, wow.
Because we did a carpooling.
Okay.
In total, it was probably about 3 hours in total.
That's not too bad, even with the going a bit around the way.
Yeah, and that's a good estimate, but I think even if I was to drive myself, I'd have to go through Hadley. To be honest, both times I've gone up to Shale, I've gone kind of out of my way so that I could carpool, so I'm not doing that drive by myself.
Okay.
I don't mind driving, but at the same time, it's nice to be in a group of people, because it is a longer ride than a lot of the other races I've been to.
Yeah.
And it also adds just to the aesthetic of the weekend, hanging out with everybody. So
yeah, it does, absolutely, absolutely. So,
but
would you go back?
Absolutely. I've already have it on Facebook that I'm interested in next year's event.
That's awesome.
Figuring that out.
So
Polar Bear, I'm.
Go on.
What's that?
Carry on.
I was just going to say, Polar Bear, you'll see me there. I probably won't be running in the winter time, but you will definitely see me there, because just the atmosphere up there, being up there, with both Jill and Rob, knowing everybody who came through, and that was what really is a draw, because it felt like, in a way, it felt like a home away from home, even though it was only my second time being on the property. Like, they definitely welcome you in with open arms, and that is a really cool aspect.
So we all tend to run the course as Journeyman, and we do very, very, should we say casual laps around the course, but they also have competitive events going on, and they had a mandatory obstacle completion wave, which I think only 2 people signed up for, because that's absolutely batshit crazy to put yourself in a position where you have to finish every obstacle. Now, one of the Shale Hill regulars that many people know is a guy called Steve Beckwith, and he has never done more than 2 full completion laps. His 3rd lap, he's always gotten stuck at the Tarzan swing, which is right at the end of the lap. He did it this year. I actually saw him at one point. I was over there, and he'd been there a good hour already, and he'd done probably a dozen of 15 attempts at it and kept coming off. And he was down there for probably another hour, if not longer, before he finally came in across the finish line with a big shit-eating grin on his face, because he'd done it. He had done 3 fully completed laps, which was breaking his own personal record. And I don't know of anyone who's done 3 full completion laps at Shale Hill.
I think Peter did.
Did he?
This weekend.
Oh, that's right. The new guy.
Yes.
Yes. So
who
I
ran with Steve for a good chunk of the time.
Right. So Peter
I got
showed
to run.
up. Go for it.
I got to see them a little bit. Like, during my second lap, they were like right ahead of me. Well, they were behind me, and then they were ahead of me. And it was definitely kind of neat to stop and watch them, because when I caught up during my second lap, they were at the Tarzan, and they had headlights on it while those guys were there.
It was dark.
Yeah, because it was so dark, especially on that side of the field, and there really was no moon or anything that night as well. And they were definitely it was interesting to watch, and it was really cool because the way they were cheering each other on. But it was great to watch that, and just to see them out there, because it was people that I hadn't met yet, and that was one thing that was really cool to see.
So let's talk about obstacles. Which obstacles did you get up there and you just looked at and were like, what the hell is that? Because I've run into some of those. Rob builds something, I get to it, I just stare at it, I'm like, I don't even know, Rob. Like, what do we do?
I have to think. It's kind of a little hazy because I was pretty tired the second time around.
Cliffhanger does that to me.
Having only been there twice, it's not like you've had time to memorize it. Like, no. I know that course like the back of my hand. I could do it in my sleep, I think. But then again, I lived there for a month and did it every day for a month. So that
the very first time
leads
I saw
to a bit more familiarity.
Yeah.
There was definitely the one like where he had the different ways to do the rig, where there was like the baseball or the tires. That was something that I kind of looked at, and I was like, I think I would fall flat on my butt if I did that.
So here's the thing with that obstacle.
Side I did it on.
The very first time I saw that, I thought, the tires are obviously the easiest way to do it. I mean, duh, that just looks easy. So you get on it, and you almost immediately do the splits, and then fall flat on your back. So, no, not so much.
I helped build that one before last summer's event. And I remember being out there and hanging the tires, and Rob going, everybody's going to do the tires. The tires are going to be too easy. I can't believe everybody. Why am I doing this? Blah, da, 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 da. And then he tried the tires the first time and didn't make it across. He was like, not as easy as I thought it was.
Yeah, I think that's what the thought everybody has when they get to it. And they're like, oh, the tires. The tires are easy.
Tires will be easy. Yeah, no.
The other one, now that I'm thinking, the other one that, like, I sat there and I got to, because I remember him talking about it at the racers, like, the pre-race meeting, was the, where you had to go up the fireman's pole.
Yes.
I looked at that and I was like, okay, the fireman's pole is out. Can I get up this cargo net? And I'm like, I'm going to get up there and I'm going to freak because of the height. So I, like, walked around that thing a couple times, like, okay, there are a couple different ways. I'm not comfortable with any of this. Like, I'm just going to freeze up there.
So I have a story about that one. When Rob first built that, so for those who don't know what we're talking about, you have a tower with 2 fireman's poles going up through the floor. And then there is a cargo net joining to another tower with a ramp down. So you're supposed to go up the fireman's poles, across the cargo net, down the other side. Rob has recently added a cargo net to the side, so you can climb up a cargo net instead of climb up a fireman's pole. But when he did that, he took the piece that joins the 2 towers, which originally was a single big cargo net, and he made 2 strips of cargo net, or rope net, which are what, three rungs wide or something like that?
3 rungs wide, yes.
Now, I don't do too well with specific types of height. That is the exact kind of height I don't do very well with. So when I first got up there, I was like, oh, he's put a cargo net on the side. This is fantastic. I climb up the cargo net and I get up to the top and I look at this little slither of rope net across to the other tower and I was like, oh, you're kidding me. Really? It took me so long to edge across that goddamn little bit of rope.
But I've seen photographic evidence that you did do it.
I've done it. Every time I go up there, I get on my butt and I go rung to rung and I edge across and stupid fucking...
Hey now.
There's definitely some interesting use of rope and getting across things. The same with the loom, where, like, you go the in and out, but then there's that rope bridge, the 3 ropes to go across. That was neat because when I was standing, there was 2 other guys that had come up. Sean Martin had caught up to me at that point, and we were there, and we were watching 2, I think they were some brothers that were doing the course, and they were talking about it, like, kind of seemed a little uneasy, and Sean was showing how you couldn't fall, like, if you had it just right, you weren't going anywhere when you were going across that rope. So that's one thing. Just watching some of these harder obstacles, when I'm running with more experienced people or people that are able to go up on these crazier ones, it's a learning experience because you kind of see how they do it, or the other aspect of it where you might be questioning, like, oh, is that safe? And they prove to you, like, if you do it right, it is definitely safe.
Here's what I can tell you is no matter how safe it actually is, when you're doing it, you don't feel safe. You feel like you're about to die.
I do have to say that I did that as a demonstration one time, and I warned the people I was with. I said, I'm about to bounce and jump around on this. I'm doing it intentionally. I'm not falling. And I did the same thing to show that if you've got the 2 side ropes in tight, you cannot fall off. Because I know the first time I got up there, I didn't have them tight enough, and I did. I fell right from standing up on that middle rope all the way down to the ground. Yeah.
Yeah, so, he was talking about it and just telling the guys this, and it was definitely a learning experience to be able to see it and listen to somebody who's able to do it and that type of thing.
There's one very important question after you've been to Shale Hill, and that is, how do you feel about hay bales?
Well, let's see. Considering I drive by hay bales every day, I'm constantly looking at those like, I could climb those now. But at the same time, itchy. Definitely not a huge fan, especially when I feel it like crumble. There was one that like I stepped up and all of a sudden I was like 2 feet up, and the next thing I know, my leg is like down and my other leg is up. One good thing is I'm very flexible. So like my knee was like up to my chest and my other leg was just down, like dangling. I ended up in some very interesting positions and predicaments during the hay bales.
We need to edit this out because then Rob will try and replace them because they're getting kind of beat down, and There's nothing worse than when they're brand new.
Our very first trip to Shale Hill was Polar Bear Challenge a few years ago, and he just put in fresh hay bales. They had frozen solid, and then he spray painted smiley faces on them all. It was after 8 hours in the cold staring at these goddamn smiley faces. It scarred me for life.
I can't promise that I haven't punched one of those smiley faces dead in the nose.
So, if new hay bales show up, is it going to be blame Kelly?
Yes.
At this point,
yes.
Sorry. My bad.
I do want to say 2 quick things. Number 1, Shale Hill is the perfect place to go, and then the next time you go, you do something you couldn't do the time before. Yeah. And every time you can do something that you didn't before, whether it's another rung, another step, another rope, another whatever. It's one of the perfect places because it doesn't change. Now, with that said, Rob has big plans before next year to do some changes to it where it's going to be updated and additional obstacles and that sort of thing. But I do want to say that. And number 2 is if you ever get the opportunity to go and be out there in the middle of the night. Vermont has very little light pollution. And I know that we left on our 3rd lap and we took off at 10 after 11 and we were out there till 2:30. And part of that excess time was we all climbed up on top of the fireman pole and we turned off our headlamps and we just laid there for probably 10 minutes and just looked at the hundreds of thousands of stars and the Milky Way. And it was just breathtaking. So if you get a chance to be out there, I highly recommend it.
Charge your headlamp battery.
Just gorgeous.
Charge your headlamp battery because mine died 5 minutes after I turned it on. So I was very fortunate
Rookie mistake, Paul.
Rookie mistake. Fortunately, it was my first time, so I was fortunate to be with a group of people who had very bright headlamps and were able to get me back in because there's no street lamps, there's no light pollution, there's no ambient light out there. It's pretty amazing.
With a full moon, it's not too bad out in the fields, but in the woods, it's tricky, and we didn't have a full moon, which made the stars even better.
Well, I am.
So
we definitely had gorgeous weather.
God,
oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, I am thrilled. Your first trip out there was good, Kelly. It's a lot of people are daunted by Shale Hill, or they don't think they can do it. So it's always good to see people who do come out and try it because we've all fallen in love with the place for very good reasons. It is not a big budget Spartan race. They don't have the marketing dollars or big shoe companies backing them or any of that stuff, but the race directors know your name. You park within spitting distance of where you camp, and the course is just like nothing else. Really is.
It was a great experience.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad. I do want to add in that Shale Hill is a permanent training facility. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're intrigued and you want to go give it a try, look up Benson, Vermont on your calendar or on your maps. And you can go out there and you can run the course any day of the year. Unless they've got another event going on. The one thing they do ask is if you're out there for the first time that you go with someone who knows the course. That could be someone like me or Paul or now Kelly or, whoever. Or they can help provide someone if you give them lead time and they can have someone available to guide you around the first time because there are a lot of things out there that you don't want to just guess on.
Amen.
Because, that's how you can get hurt. So, anyway, it's $35 to go out and just run, and you can do it in any order you want. You can go to one obstacle. You can go to all of them. You can run the whole course. You can run part of it. It doesn't matter. It is a training facility. They don't keep it well groomed necessarily all the rest of the year, but, you can always call and check and see what it looks like, and especially if you're going someone who knows the course well enough, even if it's not groomed, you can still get through it.
Give them
Can
a
I
call
ask one question?
You can.
and it's actually not in relation to the training facility part, but it's something that I remembered. Sandy, did you get to do the backwards lap?
Yes.
I did too.
How was that? Oh, you did too. I didn't end up going out for my third lap. I slept. But I had heard a few different people talking about it, and I know being on course, it was definitely a trick of the mind, like all of a sudden with somebody coming at you instead of somebody coming behind you.
Try it without a headlamp on. I did my one lap backwards.
Laps are fun.
But Sandy, you've done a whole bunch of backwards laps, because when you did the 30 days out there, you did a bunch of them then, right?
Every fourth day was backwards. And the only part of the backwards lap was a problem was when we were starting out fresh, the Anaconda First was just awful. But since it was your third lap, you already had 2 in, you were already warmed up. So in this particular case, going backwards was pretty cool. Doing some of the obstacles backwards was fun. There were a couple that I didn't consider doing backwards that some people in our group were like, oh no, you can definitely do this backwards. And it was like, cool. So, it was, the coffins are a lot more fun backwards than forwards, that's for sure.
Oh, I bet. I hate those things. I can barely fit in the damn things. I did my 1 lap backwards, and it was the first time I'd ever run a backwards lap. And the only reason I did that was because I set off shortly after a bunch of people I knew, and they were all on their third lap. So I figured I'd just drop in with them, which in hindsight proved to be a very good idea because my headlamp died in the dark.
Absolutely.
And they got me back in. But yeah, we got to, there were a couple of times where I bumped into someone who had kind of crossed the course a little bit and was standing there looking very lost, trying to figure out how to carry on with their backwards lap. During a spot where maybe there weren't some signs, because the signs were all obviously backwards to where you were trying to go. So it was tough to see what direction to go in. So I found it very, confusing in places. But I loved it. I had a blast. I didn't mind the Anaconda First, but, I didn't do, things like monkey bars. I didn't try and do the downhill monkey bars or anything like that, because I figured that would end very poorly if I slipped on the downhill stretch of the monkey bars.
Yeah, I have never done the downhill monkey bars backwards. Even in all the times that I've had the opportunity to try it, that it just never felt safe to me.
And I still love the wheelbarrow that Rob put in for this year's polar bear.
So much better than the bucket.
That's my favorite obstacle on the whole course, I think. Love that.
I like that over any type of bucket carry.
Oh, God.
Yes.
Or the split log carry. Did you do that one, Kelly?
I'm in a predicament where I can either do heavy carries or I can do elevation.
Yep.
So I have to choose which one. So, and being on hills and stuff, I wasn't able to take the logs.
That's fine.
Because I didn't want to risk my...
You made the right choice. It's horrible.
I was kind of glad when I got down there and I realized, how slippery it was. I was like, oh, maybe this is definitely a good choice to listen to PT. And then actually after the first, because they did the no obstacle for the first hour, the one that I got to right as the horn went off was the Tyrolean Traverse.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just looked at it and I'm like, does this really have to be the first one that I come to? But that was one thing that was kind of cool, to come to an obstacle and actually be the first one to do it. Because usually, there's so many people ahead of me.
Yep.
So many people have gone through it, and that's when I was kind of thankful for Ben, because when I got to the piping that you had to crawl under and then get to the netting on the other side, I was like, Ben, can you go in there and make sure there's no critters?
That happens.
I'm like, there's tires in there that critters can hide in. Can you just make sure? So he was kind of awesome on checking that stuff for me. But it dawned on me after I had done that. I'm like, wow, I'm actually this is the first time that I'm the first one at an obstacle.
Well, I think that's one of the things that people find very different about Shale Hill, is that when you get there and you start going around the course, if you want to, you can run alone and you could do a whole lap and not really fall in with anyone if you don't want to. You're not crowded. You're not rushed. If you get to an obstacle and there's people on it, it's not a big deal to work through and work around them. There's no backups. It's just a very different pace to a bigger event with 1,000 people, or a big box brand with 8,000 people. Very, very different.
Yeah, exactly. And the atmosphere, like even the guys who were doing the mandatory obstacle completion level, they were still so down to earth. And they were really great to talk to. We had actually gone out for dinner the night before. Peter had joined us. And so we had kind of gotten to know, and I didn't realize he was doing that until the next morning at the meeting. And I was like, oh, wait, I know you. But it was just, even the guys or the people that were doing the competitive, everybody was still very down to earth. They were out there to have a good time. And there was you were there to compete with yourself and nobody else. It didn't matter if you were journeyman or competitive or mandatory obstacle completion. You were there for yourself and not against other racers. And that's definitely the atmosphere that I enjoy personally, because I like the run your own race mindset. You'll hear me say that quite often if you're ever with me on course. Yeah. Like, this is my race. I'm doing it for me.
So if you have been on the fence about going to Shale Hill for whatever reason, Polar Bear Challenge is coming up, which is an 8-hour version of as many laps as you can in February. So expect it to be cold and snowy, which I think adds to the fun, but apparently some people don't like the cold. And then Rob has a big plan for a weekend long or a long weekend festival.
72 hour, yeah.
Yeah, around this time next year, somewhere around this time next year, early August next year.
Yes.
Yep. So watch the calendars. Put them on your radar, because you're not going to get much better value for your money. You're not going to get much better course for your money. And the people out there are amazing. I think we
Agreed to everything you just said.
One more piece we should wrap up with, which is that this coming weekend is the US OCR Championships, which Josh will be traveling to participate in. So we should hear more about it that next week. Now, this is being held in Texas. As you may, or I'm sure you know, there's been a massive, what they now calling it 1,000-year hurricane. Hurricane Harvey has hit Texas pretty hard. So our thoughts to everyone in the OCR community down there. The venue for US OCR Champs is not affected, beyond the availability of things like gasoline, which apparently is getting pretty scarce down there right now. But the venue is away from all this. It is not underwater. There's no flooding, no bad weather. So the event is still going on. And it's looking like it will be a very awesome experience. So I'm a little jealous of Josh for getting to go do it for the first time. But he will let us know how it is next week, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
And with that, I think that's all we got this week. Pretty straightforward. Did I miss anything?
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for coming.
It's nice to get. We're going to tell Josh he's been replaced. He's gone for a week. That's it. He's replaced.
I love it. Okay.
Yeah, no argument there. Okay, all right, fair enough. All right, well,
good to me.
Thanks for your time, guys.
Thank you again for listening, everybody.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye. Hey, thanks for listening. Every episode, we're trying to bring you the latest news, the latest interviews, the latest opinions on OCR, especially as it affects New England, the New England Spartans. We can't do that without your feedback. We need to hear from you guys. You can reach out to us really easily via Facebook. We have a Facebook page for the Any Spartan Show. We also have the Facebook page for Any Spartans, and sending us a message through either of those will get to the right people. But we need to hear from you. What's working? What's not working? What do you enjoy? Again, I thank you for listening. These shows are a lot of fun to put together. We have, obviously, resources all over the place for you. Go to our website, anyspartans.com. Hop in our Facebook group and join the community if you have not done so already. And once again, I thank you for spending some time with us.